At T-Mobile, our critical mission is providing unparalleled 5G coverage for when connectivity is mission critical. Introducing T-Priority, America's best 5G network experience for first responders, even in times of congestion. More capacity, faster speeds, better coverage. T-Priority from T-Mobile, built for tomorrow's emergencies, ready today. Discover more at t-priority.com.
For qualifying organizations on eligible rate plans, coverage not available in some areas and may be impacted by emergencies.
Support comes from ServiceNow. We're for people doing the creative work they actually want to do. That's why this ad was written and read by a real person and not AI. You know what people don't want to do? Boring, busy work. Now with AI agents built into the ServiceNow platform, you can automate millions of repetitive tasks in every corner of your business, IT, HR, and more, so your people can focus on the work that they want to do. That's putting AI agents to work for people. It's your turn. Visit servicenow.com.
This podcast contains adult themes and language, and some of the things that we discuss may be disturbing to some listeners. In this podcast, we discuss sexual assault, torture, race, and murder. Listener discretion is advised. Please take care of yourself.
And welcome to Fruit Loops. Buiti binafi and bienvenidos, bitches. Thank you so much for listening.
Yeah.
Fruit Loops is a podcast about true crimes committed by people of color and those who are othered and the victims, because there are, believe it or not, systems, institutions, and patterns in society that gatekeep this information. But we're going to give it to you straight, no chaser. The truth is, we're all capable of doing very shitty stuff.
Yep.
And all victims deserve to have their stories told. These crimes rarely get any public attention because, in the simplest of terms, the news is racist. Allegedly.
And we are Wendy and Beth. She's Wendy, a Black Latinx woman, and I'm Beth, and I just happen to be white.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's just a little piece of who we are.
Oh, yes.
But who we are not is journalists, investigators, or psychologists. We're just a couple of gals interested in true crime. Also, the opinions expressed in this podcast are just that, our opinions.
All right, my friend. Who are we talking about today?
Well, this is our episode 242 about the new Bedford Highway Killer. And this one is a little different. It's an unsolved mystery, which we don't usually do. We've done it before, but I think this one's really different. And it was requested by our fruity Corey.
Yes.
So we had to do it. Just had to do it.
We had no choice.
No choice.
And we were actually very happy about not having any choice.
So between April and September of 1988, 11 women vanished from the streets of New Bedford, Massachusetts. By the spring of 1989, the remains of 9 victims had been found along local highways. The remaining missing 2 women have never been found. They are presumed dead. The case became known as the New Bedford Highway Killings, although it is sometimes called the Bristol County Highway Killings because the bodies were not all found around New Bedford. They were in different cities.
Yeah, and there's maps and stuff with the pins and the strings and the dots.
Right,
and
all
you
of
can
that
see,
stuff.
you can see all that stuff. But before we get into the case, how you doing?
I'm okay. Today was pretty stressful, actually. But
yeah.
It's almost over, so I'm glad about that.
Here we are at 6 p.m. your time? Just a few more hours till your pillow and your head meet, and that's that.
Thinking about the debate, which is tonight, is making me stressed out.
The time frame really fucked me up. I thought it was over, and then I went to my social media, and it hadn't even started.
Yeah, it's just
I really
starting
haven't known
now.
what to do with myself.
Yeah.
So this will be a wonderful distraction.
Yes.
I love a good distraction, and this will do the trick.
This is it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm overwhelmed by like the fourth quarter of it all. It's the fourth quarter of the year. I just turned 40. I had a physical today. My labs all came back. I had labs. I'm getting a mammogram. That all sucks. But anyway, I'm still so happy to be here with my friend Beth. And on top of that, thrilled to be here with the Fruities during this episode. This is one of our Patreon bonus episodes. And we allow our Fruities, our Patreons who have been here with us and are supporting us, to record with us and give some input on the recording. So, you know, here we go, I guess. Yeah. Let's get into some listener letters. Where is the button? Here it is.
Well, hello, angels. Thank you.
What's in that bag, Beth?
Well, the angels just handed me another empty bag.
Son of a bitch!
So there's nothing in the bag, but if you have any questions or comments, please send them to fruitloopspod@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail at 602-935-6294. And we may feature it on a future episode, but if you don't want us to, just let us know and we won't.
So, more importantly, again, we said this is live for all of our Patreons who are $1 and up. You can participate and hang out with us. We try to do this once a month. Eventually, this recording will be available for everybody, but it means so much to us that you are here with us. We know that you could be anywhere in the world, including watching the debate. But you're here with us, and that means so much to our hearts.
Yeah.
Here at Fruit Loops HQ. We're very happy. We love you all so stinking much, and we are just grateful for your support. We've been able to do some incredible things because of our Patreons, so we want to do everything we can to show our gratitude. And one of the things that we've been able to do is we're going to CrimeCon next week, and we're very, very excited about it. It would be impossible without our listeners and our Fruities and our Patreons. So thank you to all the folks. If you've been a Fruitie since day one, or you just started to, if you are like, I never got a personalized shout out. I was thinking about this today and I feel horrible about it. So I'm going to give a tune, just a Patreon tune, to say thank you. And I hope that all the Patreons don't hate it. And if you threw a party, he invited all the Fruities too. You would see the biggest gift would be from us, and the card attached would say, thank you for being a Fruitie. Yeah.
That was awesome.
Oh, thanks, Fred.
Love it. Yeah.
Anyway, we love you guys so much, and that's just a little taste of how much our hearts beam for you. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get into the story when we come back.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Commercial Insurance. Business owners, meet Progressive Insurance. They make it easy to get discounts on commercial auto insurance and find coverages to grow with your business. Quote in as little as 6 minutes at progressivecommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company. Coverage provided and serviced by affiliated and third-party insurers. Discounts and coverage selections not available in all states or situations.
I'm an American vigilante. I have a question for you. What would you do if someone you cared about was abducted, taken from you? Would you call me? Would you care about how I got them back? Download American Vigilante now.
We're back. Remind us, Beth, who is our subject today?
Our subject today is the New Bedford Highway Killer. Over 30 years ago, 9 bodies were found along highways near New Bedford, Massachusetts. 2 women remain missing. 1 man was indicted for one of the murders, but no one has ever been convicted.
So now we're going to get into the love and light section of our show, where we just say to everybody involved, rest in power to the victims whose lives were cut way too short, and love and light to their loved ones and communities left in the wake of this tragedy. The victims' names are Robin Bobby Lynn Rhodes, 28, Rochelle Clifford Dopierala, 28, Deborah Lynn McConnell, 25, Deborah Medeiros, 30, Nancy Lee Paiva, 36, Deborah Greenlaw DeMello, 35, Mary Rose Santos, 26, Sandra Botello, 25, Don Mendez, 25, Christina Montero, 19 years old, and Marilyn Roberts Cardoza, 34. Rest in power to all of them. Again, just to every single one of them. All of those names listed, those were somebody's child, right?
Yeah.
And so our hearts go out to the communities and loved ones left behind. Now we're going to get into the setting. Take us there, Beth.
Well, the setting is New Bedford, a city in Bristol County, Massachusetts, located on the Acushnet River and Buzzards Bay. Buzzards Bay is considered one of the finest sailing locations on the East Coast and is frequently compared, in terms of sailing conditions, to San Francisco Bay, which I don't know what that means, but it sounds good.
I mean, foggy, cold water, choppy. That's what I imagine, but I really don't know.
Yeah, I don't know about sailing conditions, but it sounds like they're happy about it.
Listen, if you're from the East Coast, you know where to find us. So originally, the territory of the Wampanoag people, the colonial settlement that would later become New Bedford, was founded by, well, it was taken by English Quakers in the late 17th century. Quakers were abolitionists who played a central role in the anti-slavery movement. That's all great, but people already live there. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. New Bedford was once the whaling capital of the world, and the maritime industry brought all kinds of immigrants to the city. The whaling industry created job opportunities for people of all backgrounds, both at sea and in the shoreside businesses that supported whaling.
Now, this is whaling, fishing for whales, the
Yes.
capturing and killing of whales and
Yes.
selling their meat, right?
Yeah, it was, well, actually, the fat was a big deal.
Okay.
Before petroleum, whale fat was used for a lot of things that petroleum is used for now.
Okay.
Another one.
Mind blown. Didn't know that. I was like, where are all these people
What's
eating
so big
whale
about
for?
whales? Yeah.
I know indigenous people, and whale is delicious meat. I know that that's a custom. But I was like, why are all these white people
Why
having
do they
whales?
want
What do they
whales?
want with them? What are they doing?
Kind of like the oil industry now. I mean, it was
I see.
big. It was a big deal.
I see. Oh, thank you, friend, for educating me.
You're welcome.
In the 19th century, New Bedford was a center of abolitionism, and the city played a prominent role in the Underground Railroad. We love that. The large Quaker population and the population of free people of color meant protection for runaway enslaved people, while the coastal trading system provided opportunities to hide aboard vessels leaving southern ports. It's genius.
Yeah. The whaling industry's decline, once oil was,
They struck it
drilling
rich.
for oil, yeah.
Mhm.
And also people protested the whaling industry. So the decline of the whaling industry brought economic uncertainty to New Bedford until the textile boom in the early 20th century, when New Bedford became a leading city in the nation in cotton textiles.
Now, I'm just because I saw a comment from Bryn about the whaling industry, it wasn't a problem when indigenous people were just using whale meat and whale life to sustain their own and just kind of using what they needed.
Yeah.
And then it turned into this really like
Industry.
gotta get it all,
Yeah.
gotta get them all. Like
Yeah,
hungry
just
hippos with
exactly
whales.
what they did with the buffalo as well.
Yeah. Oh,
and
it's awful.
Even beaver back in making
yes.
beaver hats and stuff like that.
Yeah, everything has value, and therefore other things have less value, and therefore capitalism. It's the industrialization, as Bryn says,
Exactly.
and it's a problem. In the mid-1900s, Technological advances such as trucking and refrigeration helped expand New Bedford's fishing industry. Today, New Bedford is considered the #1 fishing port by value in the United States.
New Bedford's population is about 100,000 and has been for decades. Back in the 80s, the city was very majority white at about 85%, with a black population of about 3% and Latinx around 7%. There's also a very large population of folks with Portuguese ancestry in New Bedford.
Today, it is still majority white, but at approximately 57%, and about 5% black, but there's a large Latinx population, about 25%, and the city has a community of Quiche people from Guatemala who immigrated to the United States to avoid the Guatemalan War, and those are indigenous people in Guatemala.
New Bedford is one of the most historic cities in the nation. Moby Dick is set there.
Whoa.
Frederick Douglass lived there. It was a stop on the Underground Railroad, and it's one of the nation's most important fishing ports.
Very historic place.
Yes.
16 blocks of the downtown area are preserved national park that is reminiscent of old London, with cobblestone streets lined with shops, restaurants, art galleries, and gaslight lamps.
It sounds
What do we
pretty.
need those for? Yeah, it does sound pretty though. Anyway, however, as a factory town and a fishing port, it has sometimes been described as hard scrabble. Is that meant to be an insult?
No, it just means like people have a hard time living there.
Aha, okay.
They have to work hard.
Ah, okay.
Something like that.
Yeah.
The women who were murdered in this story frequented an area of New Bedford that is commonly referred to as Weld Square. It was once a nice working-class neighborhood with apartments and stores, but it deteriorated during the 60s and 70s, becoming a rundown mix of storefronts and tenements. Crime, drug dealing, and sex work moved in as residents and businesses moved out.
In 1983, New Bedford was rocked by a notorious case in which 6 men were accused of gang raping a woman on a pool table at a tavern called Big Dan's. It gained national attention and is the basis for the 1988 Jodie Foster movie, The Accused, which I've never seen, but I did watch the trailer
really
in preparation of this show.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it's a really good movie. Yeah.
Okay, maybe I'll go back and watch it.
The same year that movie came out, the killings in New Bedford began, and the New Bedford police weren't prepared to deal with serial killings. Most murders in New Bedford at that time were local murders, and it was rare that police did not solve them.
Using DNA to solve crimes was unheard of. There were no computers, and police reports were either handwritten or prepared on a manual typewriter. Typewriter. What? That's great. So Massachusetts only started using the computerized automated fingerprint identification system, also known as AFIS, 2 years earlier, and only a handful of local departments across the entire state were entering new fingerprints into it. What were you guys
wild.
thinking? That is, I mean, if you were like, how did we get to this messy hoedness position?
Yeah.
That's how you do it.
Yeah, well, they had to do things in a different way before computers.
Right.
And, 1988, that was pretty early for computerized stuff.
And I'm sure there was an attitude by some who were like, this is just a phase.
Yeah, we don't need it.
We don't need computers.
So the notorious Big Dan's rape case has always garnered more attention than this story, which I actually never even heard of until Corey requested it.
Oh, interesting.
And some people don't care because the victims have been devalued as simply drug users and sex workers. Mm-hmm. But that's not all they were. These women were wives, mothers, aunts, sisters, daughters, and girlfriends. And between them, they had 15 children. So that's a lot of people who were affected by this.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So now let's get into the timeline. So on March 31st, 1988, Marilyn Roberts Cardoza, 34 years old, went missing. She was known to have substance abuse issues. Her family thought that she had gone to the West Coast to live with a relative, but later learned that she had never left the New Bedford area.
The following month, Robin Bobby Lynn Rhodes went missing. The 28-year-old mother was last seen in New Bedford in April of 1988. She was drug dependent but never involved in sex work and was friends with several of the other victims.
For a short period of time, New Bedford attorney Kenneth Ponte dated Bobby Lynn Rhodes. He was a local boy who had received a pardon for a drug possession arrest and then became a lawyer. Ponte was known for doing drugs. And every source said that about him.
Yeah.
And for his connections to 3 of the victims, all of which he represented in court proceedings.
Ponte also had a relationship with another victim, Rochelle Clifford Dopirala. On April 3rd, 1998, Ponte had an altercation with a man named Roger Swire, who Rochelle alleged had raped her. During the altercation, Ponte pulled a firearm, and he was arrested.
Whoa! Rochelle, a 28-year-old Falmouth resident, was last seen in New Bedford on April 27th, 1988. Rochelle was, of course, a witness in the case against Roger Swire, the man she said had raped her. She was last seen with her friend's boyfriend, Frankie John Pina. More on him later.
Christina Montero, a 19-year-old with substance abuse issues, was last seen in New Bedford in May of 1988. Her mother's fiancé was a Dartmouth police officer. She has never been located and remains missing.
On May 27th, Deborah Medeiros, a 30-year-old from Fall River, disappeared from New Bedford. Also in the same month, Deborah Lynn McConnell, a 25-year-old mother from Newport, Rhode Island, went missing from New Bedford.
In June, this is all in 1988, so it's like one right after the other
quick
after the
succession.
other. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
In June, Marilyn Roberts Cardoza, who had gone missing in March, was reported missing by her father, a retired police officer. Marilyn has never been found.
On July 3rd, 1988, the first body was found. It was the 4th of July weekend, and a motorist who had stopped to relieve herself came upon the partially clothed, unrecognizable corpse. A bra was around its neck, about 30 feet from the road, on northbound Route 140 in Freetown. Freeway 140 comes up a lot in this story. The victim was not identified until December of 1988, and that was Deborah Medeiros.
Less than a week later, on July 7th, Nancy Lee Pava went missing. She had no involvement in sex work, but had a history of substance abuse and was in a very difficult domestic violence situation with a heroin dealer named Frankie Pina. Frankie was an ex-convict and the only suspect that we know of who was a person of color.
Nancy was last seen after walking out of Whispers Pub in the south end of New Bedford after having an argument with Frankie. Frankie later reported her missing to the New Bedford police. Police knew him well, as he had many run-ins with the police involving drugs and domestic violence. So it's notable that he would go to the police to report somebody missing.
Yeah, because he probably didn't want to do that.
Yeah. So it must have been serious.
But Frankie lived with Nancy Pava and Rochelle Dopirala, and he was the last person to see Rochelle alive on April 27th, 1988. He was also with Nancy Pava before she went missing on July 7th, so he was a suspect.
On July 11th, 1988, Deborah Greenlaw DeMello, 35 years old, went missing from New Bedford. She had walked away from a prison work release program in Rhode Island on June 18th, 1988, and ended up in New Bedford. Deborah had a history of sex work, and she also had a history that included substance abuse.
On July 16th, 1988, Mary Rose Santos was last seen dancing at the Old Quarterdeck Lounge in New Bedford in the early morning hours. The day she disappeared, she went shopping for a gown to wear to a church ceremony to renew wedding vows with her husband, Donald.
Donald had dropped her off earlier that day near the downtown bus station, and witnesses said she had planned to walk to a friend's apartment nearby before she went missing. Mary Rose was known to have struggled with substance abuse.
Less than a month after the first body was found, on July 30th, a second body turned up. 2 men on motorcycles found the remains on the westbound side of I-195 in Dartmouth, about 1.5 miles east of the Reed Road exit. She was identified in December 1988 as Nancy Pava. Nancy left behind 2 teenage daughters.
Sandra Botello, 25, was last seen in New Bedford on August 11th, 1988, after leaving her apartment around 11 p.m. She was known to be involved in sex work, and she had substance abuse issues. Frankie Pina was incarcerated in July of 1988 on unrelated crimes and was still in prison when Sandra went missing.
So he could not have done anything to her. Yeah. In August and September of 1988, New Bedford police detective John Dextradur was investigating homicide and property crimes when he took an interest in solving assaults on sex workers. Detective Dextradur was the first person to notice that women were going missing at an alarming rate and the similarities in the backgrounds of the missing young women.
That's crazy, because this all started in what, February?
No,
March?
it was
April?
March.
Yeah. So 6 months later.
Five or 6 months, yeah.
Yeah, somebody finally noticed. He made a list of missing women he thought were related, contacted the district attorney's office, and set up a meeting to make a pitch for a task force. His hunch regarding the women turned out to be true. Almost every single woman on his list turned up dead along a highway. Now we're getting somewhere.
The last woman to go missing was 25-year-old Dawn Mendez on September 4th, 1988. She had a history of sex work and substance abuse. Dawn is the only black victim that I can tell, although some of the other victims might be ethnically ambiguous. Dawn was last seen in New Bedford walking from her South End apartment heading to a family christening party.
I want to take a moment to tell you about my podcast, Carol Costello Presents Blind Rage. In 1984, a woman named Phyllis Cottle was abducted in broad daylight, tortured, and left to die in a burning car in Akron, Ohio. At the time, I was a rookie reporter covering this horrific story. Since then, I've reported every kind of crime imaginable. I've been able to leave most of them at work, but not this one, the one that buried itself under my skin and stayed put. Phyllis Cottle was a badass woman, and I want to tell you her story. A production of Evergreen Podcasts and signature title of the Killer Podcast Network, you can find Carol Costello Presents Blind Rage wherever you get your podcasts. Discover more great true crime and paranormal programming at killerpodcast.com.
Ohio is a land of mystery. From missing shipwrecks and lost treasure beneath her surface to strange phenomenon slicing through her skies. From myths that have evolved around historic events and people to the unsolved murders and disappearances that keep her communities wondering what happened. Find Ohio Mysteries on your favorite podcast app and let's explore the inexplicable. OhioMysteries.com.
On October 10th, 1988, attorney Kenneth Ponte closed his law office and moved to Port Richey, Florida. Yay! Although this raised suspicions with law enforcement, he had been talking about moving to Florida for a year.
So take that how you will. On November 8th, 1988, the body of Deborah DeMello was found just off the off-ramp to the I-195 eastbound Reed Road exit in Dartmouth by a state highway crew. Her remains were concealed by trees and her clothes were strewn in nearby tree branches. She was actually found with some of the belongings of Nancy Pava, and she was identified in December of 1988. So that's kind of a weird one. I mean, obviously these two murders are connected.
Obviously, yeah.
Yeah. One was found...
Her stuff?
Yeah, with the other victim's stuff.
Mm-hmm. And nearby where the other body was found.
Oh, yeah. A lot of these bodies are being found also at the Reed Road exit.
They're in clusters.
Eastbound or southbound at I-195.
Mm-hmm. On November 29th, the body of Dawn Mendez was found on westbound Reed Road ramp off I-195 by a search dog, and she was identified days later.
On December 1st, Deborah Lynn McConnell was found off Route 140 northbound in Freetown by a search dog. She was found nude with a bra wrapped around her neck. She was last seen by her family in May of 1988 and was identified in March of 1989.
On December 10th, the body of Rochelle Clifford Dopirala was discovered in a gravel pit off Reed Road in Dartmouth, about 2 miles from Route 195, by hunters riding ATVs. She had been beaten to death. Her partially clothed remains were positively identified later that month.
A lot of the victims, they couldn't tell what happened to them.
Yeah, the cause of death or even their race.
Yeah.
Which was crazy.
The remains of Bobby Lynn Rhodes were found on March 28, 1989, along Route 140 southbound in Freetown by a Connecticut State Police canine. Her remains were positively identified in April of 1989.
On March 31st, 1989, the body of Mary Rose Santos was found by 2 boys about 25 feet from Route 88 southbound in Westport. She was identified soon after she was found. The remains of Sandra Botello were found by a highway work crew on April 24th, 1989, along I-195 in Marion. Her remains were positively identified that same month. So now we are going to get into the investigation and the arrest.
No arrest.
Hit it, Beth. Oh, wait. No arrest. Just the investigation.
The investigation and no arrest.
No arrest. That's right. It's unsolved. Hit it, Beth.
The principal investigators were state police detectives Jose Gonsalves and Marianne Dill, and Detective Richard Ferreira of the New Bedford Police Department. State detectives Gonsalves and Dill went from town to town investigating local murders along with local police. So I guess they were helping the local police.
We don't always see that, so that's good.
No. Yeah, that is good.
Gonsalves said, quote, "After the third body was found, Marianne and I knew there was a serial killer around, and John Dextradur was right all along," unquote.
During the investigation, one name kept popping up, that of New Bedford attorney Kenneth Ponte. He'd represented some of the women in court. Nancy had worked in his video rental shop. Don had once been seen banging on the door of his house, where Rochelle had also stayed. He had relationships with both Robin and Rochelle.
Ponte has been described as an eccentric character. Have you seen video
of him? To say the least.
Yeah.
I haven't seen video, but I can only imagine.
Yeah, no, it's almost like he doesn't know he's being videotaped because he's like pushing people and like...
Oh my God.
So to see these words, I'm like, oh, he is kind of he seemed like a hothead.
Yeah.
A reformed heroin addict, heavy cocaine user, low-level lawyer, low-rent lawyer, and deputy sheriff of Bristol County who carried a gun. And my understanding is he didn't use it wisely.
The way that he should.
In the way that he should. And investigators were told Ponte was, quote, a bit weird, unquote.
He often invited sex workers to his house for drugs and was known for bouts of paranoia. Throughout the investigation, there were rumors of snuff films being made locally, and one woman claimed Ponte had watched a pornographic video in which a woman being strangled looked dead.
Wow. So, Kenneth Ponte was District Attorney Ronald A. Pena's prime suspect. And on January 18th, 1989, Ponte returned to New Bedford Superior Court after a grand jury indicted him on the gun charge from April 1988.
Yeah, that was when he attacked the guy who his girlfriend, Rochelle,
said
had raped her.
Yes.
And then Ponte went to Florida, so he came back because he was indicted.
Thank you, friend, for putting it all together.
There's a lot of information.
A lot of details. Yeah, no, and I'm going to be honest, like, when we started this, I watched so many YouTube videos today. And even though I've been researching this case for the past week, I still feel like there's so much.
Yeah, there's so much more.
Yeah,
I feel like I was going to say, I feel like I could research this for weeks.
This would
and
take,
I still wouldn't know.
It could be a whole Game of Thrones saga. I mean, it's like it could be multiple seasons. I mean, multiple interviews with people. There's just so much to it.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Which leads me to my hot take too early. Why didn't they do any of that before? To help solve it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. So back to the story. Then in May of 1989, Anthony DeGrazia, a 26-year-old construction worker, was identified by a woman who said he'd attacked her, and he was identified by means of a photo provided by a young, inexperienced detective. And he was charged with 4 counts of rape 6 counts of assault and battery, and 1 count of assault with intent to rape.
These charges stemmed from attacks on sex workers during the same time frame that the disappearances were occurring. However, this woman, who identified him as her attacker, said he looked like her attacker. It doesn't sound like she was very positive.
Yeah, and it sounds like...
investigators were grasping at straws.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
DeGrazia was unable to pay bail and spent the next 13 months in the county jail on allegations brought against him by DA Ronald Pena. DeGrazia was finally released on bond on June 27th, 1990.
Immediately afterwards, he was rearrested for allegedly uttering threats against DA Pena for wrongful prosecution and imprisonment. DeGrazia again posted bond and was re-released. DeGrazia was interviewed by the grand jury but was never charged.
A grand jury did return an indictment against Kenneth Ponte, and on August 17, 1990, Ponte was arraigned on a single count of murder, that of Rochelle Doperla. The indictment accused Ponte of beating Rochelle to death on April 27, 1988.
Ponte entered a not guilty plea and was released on $500,000 bond. D.A. Pena suggested that Ponte killed Doperla because she was allegedly planning on exposing Ponte's drug activities. Spoiler alert, everybody already knew, but a special prosecutor was appointed to look into all of the evidence against him, could find nothing that could be used to convict him.
That September, a new district attorney, Paul F. Walsh, Jr., was elected, and on July 29, 1991, Walsh dropped the murder charge against Ponte. The DA's office announced the murder charges against Ponte were dismissed due to lack of evidence. Paul V. Buckley, an independent prosecutor, said the grand jury had indicted Ponte on a, quote, fishing expedition, unquote.
On July 27, 1991, Anthony DeGrazia was found dead outside his ex-girlfriend's home in Freetown. His death was ruled a homicide by Freetown police, who were the first to arrive on the scene. The district attorney's office later ruled his death a suicide, but the autopsy report ruled DeGrazia's death a homicide.
So yeah, it's always reported that it was a suicide, but it doesn't sound like
it.
They knew for sure.
Yeah.
Because the autopsy said it was a homicide, but the DA is saying that it's a suicide. I don't know.
It doesn't make any sense. That's all.
No. And if it was a homicide, it wasn't investigated.
Thank you. Yeah.
In a public broadcast, Special Prosecutor Paul Buckley stated that it was a, quote, timely thing, unquote, that DeGrazia took his own life after being made aware that he was now being considered the prime suspect in connection to the New Bedford Highway Killings case. Later, this statement was retracted by the DA's office, but I think that they were trying to close the case.
Real bad. Real bad. Yeah. Grasping at straws, don't have enough evidence, but let's just say this guy who killed himself
First of all, let's say he killed himself. And then we'll say he did it.
Thank you. Even better characterization of what I believe happened, which is police messy hoedness fuckery. So DA Paul Walsh and 2 of the original investigators believed DeGrazia was the highway killer. And by taking his own life, it was an admission of guilt. When has that ever been true? But no evidence was ever presented that linked DeGrazia to the rapes or assaults he was charged with. Nor has there ever been any evidence produced by DA's office connecting DeGrazia to the highway killings.
So I'm not saying it's impossible that he was the murderer, but there's no evidence. We haven't seen the evidence, is what I'm reading.
That's fine, but I also think there's evidence to suggest that the police department and the community really wanted this case to be solved.
Oh, for sure.
Would have done
they wanted to pin
anything to do that. Yeah.
Yep, I agree. Roger Swire, the man that Rochelle Doperla accused of rape, was ruled out as the killer, as was Frankie Pena. Some of the theories are that the perpetrator is now in jail or he died, and that's why he stopped killing. Or maybe he moved away and is killing someplace else.
Okay. I love theories. My mouth actually literally just started watering. New Bedford has a sizable Portuguese community, and many of the highway victims were of Portuguese ancestry. There is a theory that the New Bedford serial killer is also the Lisbon, as in the capital of Portugal, the Lisbon Ripper, a serial killer in Lisbon, Portugal, who murdered sex workers.
In 2011, Jose Pedro Guedes confessed to murdering 3 of the women in Lisbon attributed to the Lisbon Ripper. But he has never been charged because the statute of limitations had run out. That's crazy.
It is. And it's only 15 years in Portugal.
In Portugal. Yeah. And there's no evidence that Guedes ever lived in the U.S.
In 2015, serial killer Daniel Tavares was found guilty of the 1988 stabbing death of Gail Botelho, a 32-year-old single mother of 3 who lived across the street from him in Fall River, Massachusetts. There is speculation that he could be the New Bedford Highway serial killer.
Another theory presented the possibility that the murders were connected to the production of snuff films. We touched on that earlier.
Mm-hmm.
It was rumored that one or several of the victims were involved in the casting of these films. This theory was dismissed by investigators because there was no evidence to support it.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like it was just a rumor going around town.
Yeah. Some people think the Connecticut River Valley Killer and the New Bedford Highway Killer are one and the same. The Connecticut River Valley Killer was responsible for at least 7 murders of young women in New Hampshire and Vermont between 1978 and 88.
Yeah, and, the timeline kind of matches up.
Yeah.
But the victimology is definitely different.
Mm-hmm.
The victims in that case were not similar to these ones.
Gotcha.
They were not sex workers and
a more vulnerable, marginalized population of people.
They were hitchhikers or women on their own, not necessarily sex workers or people with substance abuse issues. So Maureen Boyle was a reporter who covered the highway murders at the time they were happening, and she wrote a book about the unsolved murders called Shallow Graves: The Hunt for the New Bedford Highway Serial Killer. She has said that multiple theories abound regarding the killings, and the size of the suspect pool is frightening.
Oh, no. Frightening?
She said, frightening. She said, quote, "You have to step back and realize, oh my God, there are so many people who could be capable of doing this. It's really terrifying." Unquote.
Yeah, I'll say, try doing a podcast for 6 or 7 years about this stuff. It is terrifying.
Terrifying,
Whoa.
Yeah.
Now, although the serial killings predated DNA technology in 2008, some of the evidence was sent to the FBI for testing. Oh, my favorite part. The results are now stored in a federal database waiting for potential match that would alert authorities. So,
hopefully, cross your fingers.
Fingers crossed. So now let's get into where are they now? Tell us, Beth.
Kenneth Ponte blamed authorities for ruining his career, and his life went into a tailspin after he was accused of murder. In May of 1997, Ponte was disbarred for using $12,000 of a client's insurance settlement for personal use. In 2009, law enforcement obtained a search warrant for Ponte's former home.
Now, this warrant was only for the driveway and a concrete slab patio. And the patio was poured around the time that the women began to disappear. It was rumored Christine Montero was buried underneath that patio, but no evidence was discovered. The excavation was publicized and ignited rage among some victims' family members who viewed it as a publicity stunt.
In May of 2007, Ponte was arrested for shoplifting.
Oh.
A month earlier, an affidavit filed by his sister alleged that he'd threatened to kill his mother, his sister, and himself in a fight over money. And then on January 26, 2010, Ponte was found dead at home. The cause of death was ruled natural, although significant drug paraphernalia was found with his body.
On September 25th, 2019, Frankie Pena, 68 years old, was arrested during a traffic stop in Dennis, Massachusetts. He was taken into custody after officers found what they believed to be cocaine inside of his vehicle. Pena was arrested and charged with possession with intent to distribute. So he must have had a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Pena was arraigned and held on bail. We could not find any information about what happened after that, like a trial or anything, but as far as we can tell, he is currently incarcerated at a Massachusetts correctional institution.
I'm sorry, I have to go on a tangent, but I imagine a Massachusetts correctional institution to be like a nice place.
A country club?
Yeah, like that. Is that where Martha Stewart went too? That's what it sounds like.
It does sound like that. It's just Massachusetts, yeah.
It sounds like I'm picturing leaves changing in the
nice.
fall.
Yeah.
And sweaters and cardigans. That's what they do during rec time is make cardigans and wrap them. I don't know. I've watched too much TV.
Nice.
It sounds
I agree.
nice, okay?
But it probably sucks.
Probably terrible.
Yeah.
So the murders remain unsolved, and the families of the victims are still searching for closure. The cases are all featured on the Unsolved Cases pages of the Bristol County District Attorney's Office website. There is a film about this case currently in production called The Highway Murders, but it's been in production since 2016, so who knows when it'll ever come out, and we hope the energy continues to get the story out.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope it does come out.
For sure.
According to the reporter Maureen Boyle, the state police cold case unit are still following up on leads and tips from the public. She says that just because the public doesn't hear anything doesn't mean the investigation isn't continuing. Boyle said investigators have to be careful not to tip off the suspect and that you, quote, don't want to identify innocent people who may be drawn into the case, unquote.
Wait, like they did already?
Yep, like they did already.
Today, the beverage aisle looks a lot different than it used to. America's beverage companies are working together. We're delivering the options everyone wants. In fact, nearly 60% of beverages Americans buy have zero sugar. You'll find more variety than ever, including more of your favorites, now available with zero sugar. You'll also find more sizes and clear calorie information on the front of every can, bottle, and pack. We know when it comes to finding balance, the more choices, the better.
Detective Gonsalves said he regrets the right person was not arrested, and he has doubts the case will ever be solved. Wow, way to CYA. So you never have to solve the case. It's just never going to be solved, folks. Sorry, it's unsolvable.
Well, he's retired.
Okay,
so.
Well, even more lucky for him, I suppose. Quote, we did the best job we could. It's sad for me it wasn't solved. Not for me, not for Marianne, but for the victims. I just feel like we let the families down, unquote.
Retired Detective Richard Ferreira of the New Bedford Police Department said his eyes still wander to the wood lines when he drives on local highways, his mind recalling the bodies found not far from the highways. He says law enforcement was not prepared for what they investigated.
Because there weren't murders in that town, so I get that.
Right. They just never had that happen before.
Not like that.
Not like that, yeah.
Quote, in hindsight, none of us had enough experience, if any, in serial killing investigations. It's a lot more different than a regular homicide investigation. We did the best we could. We didn't have the training or experience to do it the way it should have been done, unquote. Wow, that's a heck of an admission.
Yeah.
So now let's get into our hot takes. If you are with us, Fruities in the chat, feel free to chime in. We'd love to have your hot takes be part of this recording.
Yeah.
But while Beth and I are sharing ours, just feel free to type away and we'll get to them. Beth, what do you think about this case?
Well, the last woman to go missing was Dawn Mendez, who went missing on September 4th, 1988, then nothing after that. DeGrazia wasn't arrested until May of 1989, and that's a big gap, 8 months.
Yeah.
For someone who was killing so frequently.
Right.
It was like 1 to 3 women a month.
Staggering numbers.
Yeah. It makes me think something must have happened to the perp.
Oh.
Like they died or, like I forget who said it, Maureen Boyle or somebody.
Got locked up.
Or moved away, which makes Ponte look good for it because he split for Florida in October, like the month after Dawn was found.
Right.
But Honestly, I don't know. I don't know if he did it or not. But my feeling is he didn't. He was just a part of the community.
Yeah.
He hung out with these women. They did drugs together, which is why he knew so many of them. They all kind of knew each other. I don't think it was a huge community. And same with Frankie Pina. He was also a part of that community.
Yeah.
And I have no idea who the perp was.
Yeah.
Like Maureen Boyle said, it could be anybody. There are so many suspects, even more than the ones we mentioned. And we could do a whole other episode to cover all of them.
Yeah, seriously.
But I do think it had to have been someone who lived in or around New Bedford, somewhere around there, because serial killers often stick to an area around where they live. It's convenient, you know?
Yeah.
New Bedford was the hunting ground, and then he would leave the bodies somewhere near where he lived.
Right.
And on that note, I think it probably was a white guy.
I think so, too.
Just because of the demographics. But who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows?
You know what I think? I think it was a truck driver who was from New Bedford. And then maybe he just got a new route, or he moved or got arrested and died.
Yeah.
But I think you're on to somebody, that it was probably a regular white guy from the community, familiar with everything. Heck, in my mind, he probably was like helping with the searches. Probably taking
and maybe
casseroles.
Not even one of the suspects.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? I mean, what was it? D'Amelio was a member of, is that D'Amelio, the Golden State guy, was part of the police force. What if it was somebody on the police force?
Yeah. I can't remember what his name is, but the Golden State Killer.
The Golden State guy. Yeah.
Wasn't he a fire? Oh, no, he was a police officer.
Yeah, I thought he was a police officer. And
yeah, I think he was.
Yeah. And so, you know, I also have hope because the Golden State rapist and the Golden State Killer case went unsolved for so long.
Yeah.
And then the right people heard about it, and the right people got the information, and then something happened,
they were able
and
to
we
solve it.
Found, and these cases were solved. So even though this has been unsolved for 35 years, I do still have hope, even though, and this makes me sad, that even though they have some DNA and we have DNA advancements, that there's still no solid leads.
Yeah, and I don't know what the DNA is that they have. It might not be any good.
Yeah, that too. That makes me, it's all just, it's disappointing, but I only bring up the Golden State Killer case because for so long it was unsolved.
I thought it would never be solved.
And I just I discovered true crime, and I discovered there's this unsolved case called the Golden State Killer case. It's never going to be solved. That's what I would have told you. And then it was.
Right.
So that's my hope, is that I'm wrong. A glaring detail about this case is the marginalized status of the victims.
Right.
And how so many lives were cut short so quickly, and the public didn't notice, the police didn't notice, the news didn't notice. And it just makes me forever frustrated that humanity isn't applied to these victims in the way that it should be. One of the sources I was looking into was talking about the struggles of one of the particular women that put them in the position of being in survival mode. Like maybe it was a divorce or a death of somebody that totally flipped her financial position upside down. And she found herself struggling to survive, but I don't think she engaged in sex work. Either way, what would you do if like all of a sudden financially you had nothing? You just
have to find a way to make some money.
You got to figure it out. And New Bedford is one of these really white privileged places with a really stark wealth gap. And so there's these people, the haves and the have-nots, who have to, drive these people's cars, wash these people's cars, watch their kids, clean their homes. You're like, they interact, but they don't see each other. And so when something bad happened to the have-nots, the haves didn't have to notice.
Right.
And that bothers me. 11 victims in 6 months? That's a lot.
Yeah, that's nuts.
And I'm going to steal a phrase from our pals over at the Missing and Murdered Project, that your economic status, your station in life, your occupation, your race, your gender should not be determining factors if you deserve to be safe from harm. And all the isms allowed this to go on for too long. And unfortunately, because of the timing and the duration, not enough evidence was preserved for us to be able to have solved it by now.
Right.
I was also curious about the pop culture of it all because it was the 80s. And I'd never seen The Accused, but Halloween 4 came out that year. Mystic Pizza, I've heard of it. Heathers.
I remember that, yeah. So Mystic Pizza, I know that one because I lived in Connecticut, and Mystic is in Connecticut. It's also a port town. I'd been there to look at like the ships and stuff.
Oh, you have? That's so fun.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I can't wait to read your book or watch the documentary about you and Minnie. Like, you lived so many places. You done so many things. I can't wait. You don't have to spill all the tea now, but I was thinking of what was the culture at the time. I didn't see The Accused, but I saw the trailer, and it really, like, in the end, did Jodie Foster get her justice?
I'm not going to tell you.
God damn it. Well, here's my theory is that in movies, the vulnerable victims do get justice, but in real life, vulnerable victims never do.
So the result of that case, there were 6 men, and I think 4 of them were found guilty, and 2 of them were not.
Okay. Okay.
If memory serves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't remember what happened in the movie. I just remember mainly it was about how the victims are treated. Because during that time, especially, there was a big discussion about, was she asking for it?
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And so the phrase the accused is talking about, she's being accused, although she's accusing these men, it's just kind of a play on words.
Yeah. But it's just an interesting, there's no coincidences. I believe timing is always divine. And it seems like divine timing that this story would be inserted into the zeitgeist, this movie, at the same time that this is all happening.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know, eerie?
And, that story happened a few years before this happened. So it's all kind of together.
So that's it for my take. But I do see Bryn has a couple of takes in the chat on the whaling. And super terrible, several whale species lost 90% of their populations, because we talked about the whaling situation.
Right.
And yes, it was industrialization that was the problem.
Yeah.
And Bryn feels like a candidate for genetic genealogy.
Yeah, this story.
Yes, please. Hello, where is everybody? And it also reminds her of the Gilgo Beach murders.
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely.
I'm sorry, Bryn. I'm doing this sound effect for your hot take. Yeah, your hot take deserves that air horn.
It also reminds me of the Gilgo Beach murders in that maybe if they do solve it and they find out who did it, it might be somebody we never heard of that nobody ever suspected. Just like with the Gilgo Beach murders.
Yes. Oh, dang.
Bryn said someone call Paul Holes.
Seriously, is he on this? Somebody send him an email right now. We actually know Paul, so we should see. I don't know. Maybe we could reach out and see.
Well, we don't know him. We've met him.
Yeah, we've met him. Yeah, I take that back. We've met him a couple of times. Conversed, but we're small time. We're small potatoes, and he's a big
he'd be
one.
Like, who the hell are you?
Hooligan. But I am curious if there are like old retired investigators like him on this, because this is like one of those old ones that should have been solved.
Should be solved, yeah.
So, Fruities, let us know what you think in the comments or get at us. You know where to find us. Now we're going to move on to the How Not to Get Murdered section of our show. If you love true crime and you don't want to die, here's a tip for you.
This segment is not intended to be victim blaming. We thought of this segment because I read somewhere that a lot of people listen to true crime because they want to know what they can do to be safer. This is not meant to blame the victims. It's just learning from other people's experiences.
So, just a couple safety tips, reminders for vulnerable folks, marginalized folks. Head on a swivel, use a buddy system, stay in well-lit areas, and watch a couple self-defense videos. But I wanted to just shout out a couple of organizations to inform all of us about who we can contact if somebody we know, so if somebody goes missing, if somebody's been murdered, if somebody's case has gone cold. There are organizations out there, if you feel like the police aren't doing anything, like I'm thinking of our friend, Mr. Robinson, Daniel Robinson's dad, who, I'm sure he did reach out to these people, but
right.
These are good names to just have available. We can share this information with our own communities. It is the Black and Missing Foundation. Parents of Murdered Children is another one. The CUE, Center for Missing Persons, and the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's USA Foundation. And then this one is a new one on me, but very effective. Good to know. NAM US. Have you heard of them, Beth?
No, I haven't.
The National Missing and Unidentified Persons System.
Oh.
So all of these organizations provide crucial support and resources to families and communities affected by the disappearance or the murder of their loved ones. So if you or someone you know needs this type of assistance, reaching out to one of these groups will be a really great step at any point in the process.
Nice.
And we'll have all the links to those places in the show notes.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Anything to add?
Nope.
Okay, moving on. It's shout out time. So we're gonna shout out any content by any marginalized folks, about marginalized folks, or any true crime goodies. So I stumbled upon a podcast. Ever heard of it? Podcast today. Called Empire City, the untold origin story of the New York Police Department.
Holy cow.
It's America's largest police department, and listening to the history of it, it's completely unrecognizable. Like they never
Wild.
They had, because New York used to be like a Dutch colony. They just had bells.
Right.
Like, hello.
Right.
They wouldn't like do crime, anything. It was just like, just letting everybody know it's noon. Ring, ring, ring. Just letting everybody know something is going on later. Ring, ring, ring. Like, and then they moved to whistles, and somehow now they have full military tactical gear. And I'm expecting the podcast to take me through that evolution, but that's what it's about.
Wow, that sounds really good.
Yeah, it's cool. What do you got?
I'm gonna subscribe to that for sure.
Yeah.
I wanted to shout out a Netflix documentary series called Trial by Media. And in particular, the episode Big Dance, which covers the story of the woman who was gang raped in the tavern in New Bedford. But there's a lot of other episodes as well. It's about, how the media covers these crimes.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Before I recap those shout outs, Bryn or any Fruities listening or in the chat, do you have any shout outs that you think our Fruity community needs to know about, listen to, watch, or find out about? Ooh, To Shape
a Dragon's Breath.
Oh.
Is that a book?
I'm going to look it up so she doesn't have to type so much. Okay. Just find a quick description. To shape.
So this is a shout out from Bryn.
This is a shout out from our Fruity Bryn, and it is a book titled To Shape a Dragon's Breath. And it is an indigenous take on the dragon rover fantasy trope. Wait a minute. Rider. Dragon Rider. I was like, rover. I don't know what that is, but it sounds great. Yeah. Okay. It's an indigenous take on the dragon rider fantasy trope, which
that sounds
is
awesome.
Very near and dear to my heart, only because just recently Game of Thrones had Black people on dragons. So this is very exciting that I'm not the only one who's thought about this kind of stuff. So the book is To Shape a Dragon's Breath by Moniquille Black Goose. And that is available wherever you get your books. Thank you, Bryn, for that.
That's awesome. Thanks, Bryn.
Shout out. And we also have podcast Empire City, the untold origin story of the NYPD, wherever you get your podcasts. And the Netflix documentary series Trial by Media, specifically the episode Big Dance, which is relevant to our story today. And that's all we got.
Yeah.
This has been so glorious.
Yeah.
Fruities, wherever you are, thank you so much. Bryn, God, we love you so much. We are
Thanks
so
for joining
thankful for you for joining with us. We're so thankful for your support and for you engaging with us. Your takes are fire. Your energy, your vibes are fire. We can't get, I love you. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so
much.
I'm glad you had fun.
Yeah, for reals.
She said it was a blast.
Awesome. I had fun too. I was so nervous, but didn't have to be because I'm amongst friends. No. All right, y'all. Well, Beth, where can the people find us?
Our website is fruitloopspod.com, and we use Fruit Loops Pod for all of our social media. The footnotes for each episode can be found on our website. Plus, check it out for the different ways that you can support the show. Also, join us on Patreon, where we have literally hundreds of hours of bonus content. You can also support us by supporting our sponsors or by giving us a 5-star review.
5 stars only, please.
Also, don't forget to subscribe.
That's right. Now, listen close. This is a weekly podcast, and new episodes drop every Thursday. So until next time, look alive, y'all. It's crazy out there. Ready, Beth?
Yep.
So far, it's just you and me.
It looks like we have somebody in the audience.
That's me on the producer side. So I can monitor who's watching.
But it does say 1 in audience. So we may have somebody in the audience.
We do not. It's actually...
Oh, it says people, and it says 3, 1 in audience.
1 in audience. The 1 in the audience would be... Wait.
It's Bryn.
Oh,
she just sent a chat.
She just sent a chat. Wait a minute. So this producer link is garbage.
It's useless.
Basura. Bryn, how are you?
Buzzards.
Hey.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's my new favorite word, accouchement. It's so beautiful. Yeah.
Hey. That's
my
new favorite word.
I declare.
Announcement. Yes. Economic uncertain.
It's okay,
I always get
Bryn.
to some point.
It's okay, Bryn.
where I can't read.
So, kiiche. That's why I was looking at the word like,
yeah.
I know I've seen that and I know I've heard that before. Am I saying it right? Sorry.
I have no idea. I'm not great at pronunciation. We've already established that.
It's okay, Bryn. Rochelle, a 28-year-old foul-mouth resident, and that's a town, not an insult.
No, it's Falmouth, I think.
Falmouth. Oh, I was like, foul-mouth?
Foul-mouth?
What the hell?
That's terrible.
What article wrote that? So she was a...
This is the one, I believe, that...
if I knew where you were going, I could help you there.
You would help me out. No.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'll stop.
Okay. Also, I lost my place. Where are we?
He made a list.
Okay, thank you.
So take that how you will.
Take that.
Take that.
1980. These new glasses are useless. Just kidding. Tell us, Beth.
Oh, what the hell?
What happened?
Okay, never mind.
Oh, okay.
I just got really confused for a second.
Well, okay.
I think I'm tired.
Yeah, you.
Okay.
It's a late night. Anybody know how the debate's going? Who's winning?
Sorry, I hear pounding.
I hear those little footsteps too. If you've got to go, it's okay.
It's my grandson.
It's
no,
all good.
It should be
all
fine.
good. This is a family show. And if you threw a party, he invited all the fruities too. You would see the biggest gift would be from us, and the card attached would say, thank you for being a fruity. Hair.
That was awesome.
Oh, thanks, Fred.
Love it. Yeah.
Don't watch any debate stuff. Get some sleep and have a refreshing morning. We'll find out tomorrow.
All right.
Who won.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Love you guys, and I'll get the
Love you
audio in the
too.
drive. Okay, Beth?
Okay.
Night-night. Bye,
Good
Bryn.
night. Bye, Bryn.
3 a.m., the comedy horror podcast that holds weekly gatherings around the campfire. Let me tell you what you're going to get. You're going to hear stories about demonic possessions, prison stabbings, skinwalkers, glitches in the Matrix, cult leaders, missing 411, night marchers, Operation Paperclip, Mesopotamian devil worship, and so many monsters it'll give Kanye West a runaway for his money. Pop and meme culture also aren't off topic. A camp where laughs and scares are constantly competing for first place. We're just a group of friends, trying to bust each other's balls, find the best stories, and expand the circle in the process. 3 a.m., the comedy horror podcast not for the faint or fragile of heart. Let's go.
Something is creeping in, don't follow it down. Let me introduce you to Barry Clue, an authorised financial advisor from New Zealand and a very special kind of stain on humanity.
He was a very knowledgeable young guy.
He was a registered financial advisor.
Type of guy that was bending over backwards to help you.
Now, you could be forgiven for thinking that Barry sounds like a great guy, and you'd be right. Well, right up until the point when you're wrong.
It was all fictitious.
She stole from my son who has a disability.
Chris never knew. He died believing that we're all taken care of.
A psychopath is somebody who lacks empathy, acts impulsively. I think there's a strong case that Barry might be all of those things, actually.
To find out how Barry Clue stole over $15 million from 81 victims, subscribe to Clueless, The Long Con. That's Clueless, spelt Klooghless.